How you doing? Hope everyone can hear me. I just start recording this on my end. Okay, today's live stream. I've got a couple of topics that I wanted to talk about from one of our members over on V2, and this guy just brought up a lot of different stuff that I thought there's to do, make it great. Just some ideas about stopping drinking alcohol and why people don't stop. Why, what stands in our way from stopping drinking. Peer pressure is one of the things that he brought up. I'm not going to read out the post that he sent me because a lot of it's personal stuff. But he's an attorney, and he said there's a lot of attorneys who do drink because they have to meet deadlines, and then they have to go to counselling to get themselves sorted out. He was also talking about a lot of peer pressure for him to drink, and then a lot of people ruining their reputation through alcohol, a lot of people who are who have the shame of treatment, and there's something called what we call the tall poppy syndrome, which is when you stop drinking or you don't drink, and you're surrounded by people who are doing something that they personally want to do themselves, but are they see you climbing up the ladder, basically, of success, and they don't like it. So, and then I'm going to finish it off with we're talking about. I made a quote the other day of saying that I don't suffer fools gladly, and just talking about it from that point of view. So first, let me see. I think the peer pressure for taking drugs, to start off with that one, taking up drugs and continuing to take drugs, I think there's a peer pressure in both of that. When we start out, there's a certain naivety that we've got in our youth, inexperience, that sees us going into drinking that through naivety. We want to everyone wants to be part of the crowd, everyone wants to, no one wants to look like a fucking idiot, and it's easy to get sucked into that, and continuing on with that, once you get a habit, I think it becomes part of your personality. It becomes part of the core thing that you do. You incorporate these things into your life because it makes much more sense to do that. From the point of view of everyone wants to think that they're clever. Everyone wants to think that they're intelligent, and that they. So we make excuses and we rationalize these things. I started drinking when I was 12 or 13. Hated the stuff when I first tasted it. I thought it tasted like cack, like vomit. And I had a couple of things in between, between the ages of 13 and 18. And then once I got to 18, I think it becomes a rite of passage, whether it's 17, 18, 19, 16, whatever it is. It becomes that rite of passage. You feel like you're a grown-up once you've had that drink, or it's part of that rite of passage, I think. Then it becomes pure habit. It just becomes a habitualized part of your life. You do drink. You drink because of whatever. Because you want to relax. Because you want to socialize. Because it's the end of the day. Because it's the end of the week. Because it's a celebration. Because whatever. It just becomes that pure habit. And when you look at peer pressure, it is just that. It's pressure. You don't have to succumb to the pressure. It's just an outside external pressure. And I think, like I said, a lot of people get into this when they're younger. A lot of people get into different drugs when they're younger because they can't take that pressure. They haven't got the tools for dealing with the pressure. Now, when you stop drinking alcohol, those people that you're surrounded by, the drinkers that you're surrounded by, the people who were your peers are no longer your peers. They're not on the same level as you once you stop. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, although, When you stop dummification, when you stop dumbifying your brain, then you do level up to a different level. So this is what gets most people into this in the first place. As I said, peer pressure. It's just wanting to do what the crowd is doing, what your crowd is doing happens to be. When I listen to drinkers now, there's a certain part of it which is funny, and I'm talking about the only drinkers that I listen to now are my family. Some of my friends still drink, and there's a comedy aspect to it when people are acting, when they're a little bit high and they're drugged up and stuff, but mostly it's a sad thing for me, because it's people that that are drugged up. Once you know it's a drug, and once you see that as a drug, and you can't unsee that, and you lose a certain respect for people. And I think it's why drinkers don't want other people around them that don't drink, why they tend to stick with similarity, they want the same people around them, people who are drinking, or they like to drink on their own because they know the people can't see what they're like. I mean, I've coached a lot of people in my time since I've stopped drinking, and it's always the same story, so I'm always going back to that same thing of, since I've stopped drinking, I've always, I didn't phrase it this way in the beginning, but it is a push towards getting to the best possible version of yourself. And that means extending your personal life as much as possible, increasing your own feelings of well-being, your own feelings of security in yourself, your values, your commitment to yourself, your responsibility. All of these things, that integrity, it relies on you figuring out your values. And like I said, at the beginning, I didn't do this. There was, I don't think anyone starts this process off from the beginning with, oh yes, I've got to reevaluate myself and start looking at my values from a different perspective. But it comes on you as you move upwards in this life, and you start to question yourself and question your behaviors. Once it's easy to go from one behavior to another behavior to another behavior, and just once you start questioning your behaviors, then you start questioning your thinking, and you start questioning your thoughts, and then your beliefs. I used to have this poster on my wall from, I'm sure it was Gandhi that said this, but it was a way of looking at how you can excel in life, how your life can excel, you can generate success in your life, you can generate potential in your life, or you can degenerate, you can go backwards. And the poster said that your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And the title of this video is, the title of this particular section is Alcohol, They Made Me Do It. And it's referring to people, but it really can be anything. It can be your environment. It can be the environment that you happen to be in, or the environment that you've been in for your life. Anything else. I think it's the beliefs that we have that lead to those personal restrictions, to the limiting beliefs, to that victimhood, to that learned helplessness that we've got in our lives as drinkers. And a lot of those beliefs are there from birth, or from when you can learn. This is what you're learning. They're the beliefs that are forced onto you by your family, your friends, your society in general, your peers. And we hold on to these things as if they are the truth, but they're not. They're just a belief. So it's when you get down to questioning those beliefs that you can really start to pull yourself upwards and forwards. So look, I'm okay with people who want to stay in that drinking environment. If that's what they want to do with their lives, I'm okay with that. if they want to do that to their body and their life and their mind. People who are stuck and looking for a way out. That's the people that I want to help, is people who are like I was for a long time, knowing that there was something wrong but didn't know where to look for proper help. People that are not pointing the finger at you. I mean, and saying to you, this is what you are. If you admit that you've got this problem, then this is what you are and this is what you have. So that's what I'm here for. It's a different way of thinking, that's all. We've got the Habits V2 up here. That's our platform. And if you want help, that's where I'm spending most of my time, helping people there. I tend to surround myself with people who have a desire to help themselves on a daily basis now. People whose ultimate aim in life is to leave the world with being a little bit better than when they found it. And that comes down, as I say again, going back to values. I think it was Elvis Presley, of all people, who said that values are like fingerprints, that everyone has different fingerprints, but they leave them on everything that they touch. And I really believe that it's your values, that you start off with the values that dictate everything else, and that should be your core thing, So your values should dictate everything that you do. Anyway, that's for a different video. Habits V2, we've been talking about this in some of the videos that I've been doing. The V2 stands for the second version of you, so version 2. And the V is a sort of a floating tool that we've been that I've been using for teaching. It's something that is very simple. It can highlight specific values: victory, victor, vigorous. We do a thing on the platform called the Vigorous Cycle, which is basically talking about some very simple ideas that you can run through your mind just as a sort of an engine that you keep yourself going throughout life. But anyway, the next one I want to talk about is one called the tall poppy syndrome. And it's something that happens when you stop, and I think a lot of people see you as being a threat once you stop. You stop drinking alcohol, especially the people that are in your own social circle, or even members of your family, because they see things, and I've got personal experience from this. You see that somebody else is making a change, and you automatically reflect that back on yourself if you are in the midst of doing this. So the drinkers will look at themselves and they'll look at their own drinking, especially people who are on the same drinking level as you, or who think that they're on the same drinking level as you. I mean, don't forget that when you get a lot of people talking about drinkers, and they say, well, this person doesn't drink that much, or that person doesn't drink that much. They have one or two, and then they can stop with that. And my answer to that is, how do you know that that's what they're doing? This is what they're doing in front of you, but think about your behavior in front of other people. I mean, even at my worst, I used to try and hide the majority of my drinking from everyone around me, because I didn't want to see, I wasn't too bad about hiding the drunkenness, but it was the amounts that I was drinking. I think once you start getting drunker and drunker, you just don't care anymore. So when you're a threat, you're almost always a target to people, But that's it. I mean, people are threatened by all sorts of stuff. Life itself is a threat. From birth to death, life is a threat. So, you don't have to look at success that way. It's always a choice. It's a choice to be envious. It's a choice to be jealous. It's a choice to be toxic, and it's toxic in itself. That the only person that really gets harmed by this stuff is you. Hold on, I just want to. I've got a question here, but I'll go to the question in a second, Jose. it's one of those things. It's like a silent cyanide. I don't know. I remember somebody once saying to that stuck with me. Silent cyanide that really slowly eats at you from the core. Envy, and it can take many different forms. In the sense of professional envy, private envy, envy of money, envy of looks, of height, of whatever. Youth. But it's a bad thing. For the person who dishes it out, not for the person who's on the receiving end. If you're strong enough, it goes off you like water off a duck's back. When you stop drinking alcohol, you're showing a potential release for your mind, and that potential in your life, the potential that you have as a drinker, once you stop drinking alcohol, that potential expands. It skyrockets in my experience. That's what happened to me. It doesn't happen overnight, but it gradually lifts off. It's a very slow burn, and then after a while, it's easy. It gets going. So my life has. I used to say that my life was before drinking and after drinking. Now I think about my life as being clouded mind and unclouded mind, and life has become much more full on with an unclouded mind. There's just so much more to do. So I talked about this at the beginning, the tall poppy syndrome, and it's a European, Australian thing, but I think this kind of thing goes on throughout the Western world, especially, probably throughout human experience, throughout the world with humans. I think it's a human thing. But it's where somebody doesn't want you to succeed, where they cut you down. It's sort of a social class thing. In Ireland, when I was growing up in Ireland, there was a saying, don't get above your station, or who do you think you are, or don't get too big for your own boots. And it's like a cultural straitjacket that people put on each other, and I think it comes from insecurity. I think it comes from a personal insecurity, but also a cultural insecurity as well, within a class or within a neighborhood or whatever it is. But there's another Irish saying that I used to like, and that was, fuck the begrudgers. Fuck the begrudgers. Whether they're drinkers or ex-drinkers alike, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. Anybody has got the right to criticize what we do in life. And you have also got the right to criticize anybody else, I think. The biggest threat to somebody, the biggest threat to somebody's freedom is when you're cutting out that right to moan, the right for somebody to have a moan or to be a critic, because I think it's only through listening to and understanding criticism that you learn about yourself. Maybe you're not going on the right journey yourself, so as a personal judgment, and it's, I think most people, when they're talking about stopping drinking alcohol and they criticize you from that perspective, it's a judgment without base. It's a judgment without knowledge, or it's based on feelings instead of reason, right? And everyone judges from their own perspective. That's the only place that you can judge from. Life is all about personal meaning. So a personal judgment always says more about the judge than the judgee. Yeah, it says more about you than anything else. So, like I say, life is about meaning, and you cannot be responsible for the meaning that other people take in your what you say or what you do, in your actions. So somebody else's threat is not your problem. If somebody else is threatened by what you're doing, that's their problem. When you move up, you're always going to threaten somebody else's vision of themselves, how they see themselves, their own picture of themselves. Because, like I said, they reflect, when you move up, they reflect on either their own problem or whether they can do this or not. I've been reading about, I think, is it the Jonah complex? This is going back to, what's the guy's name now? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the same guy that wrote the Hierarchy of Needs, Maslow, Abraham Maslow, and he talked about this, and he was talking about it from the perspective of that there's certain people in the world who cannot succeed in life because they've got this complex about themselves that they can't see themselves at that upper level. They can't see themselves progressing. They can't see themselves as being a leader or, and that's all right. I couldn't see myself as doing any of that stuff. If you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'd be doing this now, I would have laughed in your face. So it's having belief enough in yourself to get to that next step. Life is big enough for everybody. It's big enough to bring everybody up, to raise all the ships. But the problem is that in order to bring yourself up, which you have to do, you've got to do the work. And there's a lot of people who don't want to do the work, or, they don't know what the next step is to do the work. And I feel sorry for that, because all you have to do is take the next step sometimes. It's orient yourself in the right direction in order to move upwards and forwards. And from another perspective, what threatens other people is very subjective. It's subjective to the individual themselves. So when you try not to hurt someone else's feelings, you're just fighting a losing battle because you don't know what is going to hurt other people's feelings. And there's just so much of that around nowadays. It's like safe spaces and don't hurt my feelings, don't upset me, don't say anything that will make me feel small, don't say anything that will say anything against me. I mean, it's bullshit. This is life, but you have to learn yourself not to be afraid of disapproval. Look at who's doing the disapproving first, and ask yourself why they're feeling threatened, why they're disapproving in the first place. And then focus on your own journey, on your own life, on your own happiness, on your own mental security. So, all right, I'm going to do this. Jose, Kevin, what's the thing you hated absolutely most about drinking? For me, it was the poor sleep, hangovers, the weight gain. Thanks for doing these lives. Yeah, no problem. The worst thing for me, I think, when I was drinking was the hangovers, definitely. The sleep, I didn't notice it because I drink to knock myself out, and I think there was a fear in that was creeping up on me that was I didn't like. The hangovers were getting worse, but in retrospect, like I said, a lot of the time when you get outside of this, you look back on your old life, it's things become a lot clearer to you. And from that perspective, it was, for me, it was that fogginess of mind and how much I missed out on in my old life. And there's often a problem in life when you do this kind of thing, when you say to yourself, well, I've been drinking for 30 years, and I could have been this way, or I could have been that way. You start living your life, or you start seeing the life that you missed out on as the only life. That's the only life that you could have lived, right? Instead of saying, right, well, that's my past now, and I have to start moving forwards and have to learn from those lessons of the past. The past is what it is. There's every step of the way you could have made an alternative decision and said, well, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. But you didn't, and you are where you are because of what you've done, because of what you thought, because of everything, as we said earlier on. Those beliefs lead to the thoughts, to the words, and to the actions, the behaviors, the habits, everything. But that is what it is, and there's no point in looking backwards and saying to yourself, well, what I could have done if only I'd have copped onto myself, So that was a hard thing for me to do when I stopped. But it was that, I think it was the fogginess of the brain that I didn't realize was happening until I stopped, and then my mind started to clear up, and I realized, how much that was a big factor in my life. So I hope that answers your question, Jose. The shame of treatment is the next sort of thing that I wanted to pull out from this comment. I think a lot of people go under this idea that they have a shame of admitting that they've got a problem in the first place, right? And for me, the problem of alcohol starts the moment that you start drinking the alcohol. Like any other thing, if you're smoking, the problem starts from day one when you first light up that cigarette. If you're taking heroin, it starts from day one. If you're taking cocaine, it starts from day one. You count everything from that day, right? But alcohol is a different kind of fish. Your problems only start when you stick your hand up and you ask for help. That's when the problem appears in other people's lives, right? It's one of those experiences that I've had in life of twisted morals and twisted values, where it's only when you stop taking a drug that you're treated with suspicion when you don't use it. You're treated with that incredulity. There's a lot of people that go through this. When they stop and they say to somebody, says, well, why did you stop drinking alcohol? Either, they say, oh, poor you, you can't drink anymore. Or what do you do if you don't drink? How do you celebrate? How do you do this? How do you do that? And they don't realize because they're so locked into that behavior. But it's just one of those things. It's the context of the problem that really matters the most here, I think. You've got to look at the problem in context. When you're that kind of shame that you're getting off other people, pushed shame, they're pushing this shame onto you for trying to improve yourself. It says more about the person who is doing the pushing, right? Who is pushing that shame onto you. We live in an alcoholic world, and deflection of that drug use is rampant. It's everywhere. Alcoholism, they're terms which are full of shame. They're full of finger pointing, people pointing the finger and saying, no, there's something wrong with you. If you can't take your drink, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong internally with you. So it's full of shame. And it's designed to do that. It's designed to induce you to feel guilt about yourself, and it's designed to deflect the real issue, which is alcohol within our society. I mean, we're talking about a problem here that 3.5 million people, 3.5 million people every single year are dying from this legal drug. So between cigarettes and alcohol, that's approximately between 8 and 9 million people every single year. So look at that in terms of what is going on now and what they've done to our world because of what is going on now. And no taking away from one thing and pushing it onto another, right? A death is a death, and an untimely death is an untimely death. But, when you look at things in context, shame is a part of separation. It's trying to separate you from the norm, right? It's a groupthink thing. It's like putting a boundary up. Well, this is the people who are normal, and these are the people that are abnormal. When you step out of this, they're trying to isolate people that are beyond a certain thing, beyond a certain level of behavior, just to excuse the behavior in general, and it's for that. There's a huge fear in that on its own of being isolated, from the group. So once you're isolated from the group, you're now not drinking anymore, and you're totally isolated from the people that you're around, because those people don't want you around anymore. Like I say, that you start to get onto a different level than they are. They know you're not drinking anymore, so they don't want to be around you, because you're going to remember this stuff in the morning, whereas they're not. You're going to be judging them because of what they're still doing. They can see that in themselves. They don't want to see your changes. So you're isolated from that group. You're being isolated because you've stopped drinking alcohol from the perspective of, you're now an alcoholic. So it's easy to see why people will try and find another group to go into, So It's like, what is normality when we speak of normal? As soon as somebody defines themselves as normal, then they define the opposite as abnormal. So when you say that there is normal drinking, then there is abnormal drinking. But what other drug do we do that with? Nothing else. There's no other area where we do this. So, it's easy for other people to see you as somebody who cannot drink alcohol anymore, rather than somebody who won't drink alcohol. Do you get the difference? It's easy to see you as somebody who cannot drink it, who has got a problem with it and can't drink it anymore, rather than somebody who says, fuck this shit, I'm not drinking alcohol anymore because it's affecting my life because of what it's doing to me. It's easy to for other people to see your stopping drinking alcohol as a necessity rather than a choice, right? And it's easy for you to fall into that trap, right? You fall into the trap of, like I said, being isolated from the crowd. You fall into the trap of feeling shame for yourself because of where you were and what's made you stop. I mean, don't forget, most people who stop drinking are at that stage in their lives where they feel pain, and they're only doing it because they're in pain. And that pain almost always comes with guilt and shame attached to it because of what they've done and what they've said and all of these things that have been going around in their mind for years. So you've already got that shame attached to yourself. So it's easy for you to latch onto other people then and say, well, it must be true what they're saying to me, that I must be abnormal. Everyone's done things while they were drunk that they can feel ashamed of. I did. It's not living up to the way that you wanted to live. And like I say, you have that fear of isolation from the group, right? And you don't know where to start to change. You don't know what's going to happen next. So you've got that fear about the future, fear about stopping doing something that you've been using as a coping mechanism. You've been using as a crutch. Every time something bad's happened, you've had a drink and it sort of eased it off a little bit. Now you haven't got that, so you've got that fear as well. So it becomes easier to see yourself as damaged, right? Sometimes any diagnosis is better than nothing at all, even if it's a false diagnosis. At least it gives you a starting point. It's a quick connection that people make between shame and alcohol. It's a quick connection that other people can make because it makes them feel better about their own selves. When they see somebody who's said, oh, well, I've stopped drinking alcohol now, even if they see it. I mean, like I said, once you get into this journey and you start to improve your life, these people don't want to fucking know you anymore because they see the improvements and they don't want to see that, So, it's easy to escape into blame yourself, if you're in that position of pain, if you're in that position of being lost a certain amount of, you don't know where you're going, where you're coming from, to see yourself as an alcoholic. I couldn't help it. Instead of understanding that it's not you, it's just the behavior, it's what you've been doing to yourself, is that consumption and what that's been doing to you. It's nothing to do with the alcohol, right? It's easy to sort of look for an external solution to an internal problem and to continue doing that even after you've done that. Like I said before, it's when you go to organizations, and I'm not, the ideas of taking on that perception of alcoholic and saying that idea is yours for the rest of your life, that is a straitjacket. So you're swapping one straitjacket for another straitjacket. You're swapping one addiction, one mental addiction, for another one. So you have to see the choices that you're making and the consequences that follow those choices in both sides of this. So there's many things wrong with poisoning your mind. I don't know where to start on that one. So shame in itself can be a great motivation to get you moving. The same as pain. These are great motivations to spur you on and to get you forwards. but they're not going to keep you moving in the right direction. There's it's stuff that it's short-lived, because the shame comes with the pain. That you can push the shame down, you can push the guilt down, you can push the pain down. Once that pain disappears, then your motivation is gone. So, but again, it's down to you can only face your own problems. The most rewarding part for me of this whole journey is seeing the people that I coach slowly make those changes happen for themselves, right? I mean, I'm just there to sort of point out different things that they might try, like I said, to Jose, the biggest thing for me is that lift of the cloudiness from my brain. So now I can think straight. And sometimes, when you're talking to different people all the time, when I'm hearing different people's problems and different perspectives, it's sort of easy for me to sort of point out little things that they might not see themselves. And that's all I'm doing, helping people to sort of realize that their own choices and their capabilities, and to help them to further their own life choices, their own life potential, and get down to that road of the best possible version of themselves. Most difficult part of this for me is sometimes making these videos and not having that face in front of me, not knowing some people haven't got the answers themselves, or they can't hear the answer, they don't grasp it, or they have the ideas behind AA as the answer, that alcoholic and that loss of control as the answer, as the only answer, and that's their solution to things. That sometimes imagine people in my life that need help, or when I'm talking to doing these kind of things, I know quite a few people or past clients or something like that I'll do that will that helps me to do these things, right? Just people that I love, but most of the time it's a mirror. I'm looking at my own life, my own problems. I'm playing with the pieces of my own puzzle. I've been reading a lot of the psychoanalysts lately. Carl Jung especially had this idea for self-analysis, where he said that it's a matter of saying yes to yourself, of taking yourself as the most serious of tasks that you can have, of being conscious of everything that you do, and keeping that constantly in your mind, keeping it before your eyes, and saying that it's a dubious task, it's a hard task, and that it's a task that taxes most people, and it's going to tax you to the utmost. But for me, isn't that what life is all about? Exploration, inner exploration, being the most fruitful part of this journey. The balance between these competing forces, the pain and the pleasure. The pain is not going to disappear when you stop drinking alcohol. It's like the failure is not going to disappear, but it becomes part of the process, and you understand that, and it is something that really pulls you forwards. Like, once you understand that failure is part of that process of getting to the success, it makes the journey much more sweeter, and it makes that accepting failure as part of the process. You accept it as part of the process, so it makes it a lot more easier to deal with. And in terms of personal development, you can only understand and conceptualize meaning in yourself, in your own life, in your own problems. You're the only one that really makes the choices in your life. But at the end of the day, you either do something or you do nothing, right? You either move forwards or you move backwards. Life is, you never stood still in life, not for long anyway. You either live in pain or you work through the pain, you do something about it until you find the pleasure. And then understand, like I said, that pleasure is also a fleeting thing, but it's something that you will find more of as an underlying thing, as an underlying feeling. So you become more content, not only in life but with yourself, as you are, as a person, as an individual. You become happier with who you are, as you are. And as that journey progresses, it's not all about trying to get to the next day and to the next level and to the next level. That's nice and it's part of the process, but it's not part of life. Life is enjoying it while you're here. And I can say this without a shadow of a doubt, that all those years that I drank was just hiding from the things that I should have been doing. Like I said, there's no point in going back and thinking anything other than that's just the way it is. But that's just the way it is. So, you have to allow the choices in your own life to, other people are going to try and bring you down, and other people are going to try and force their own opinions on you, but they can't do this until, unless you allow those choices to happen. So, that's the end for that part. Anyway, I just wanted to cover something else before I finish here. I got a video, a message off. Let me just see if I can find this. This is from somebody who said, I was talking about, this guy said, please can you explain to me more the phrase you mentioned at the end of this video, I don't suffer fools gladly, in relation to alcohol. Again, I don't want to insult anyone, especially people that I used to know, and I'm not calling anyone a fool in this, but I'm calling myself a fool, and the things that I used to do in my own life quite foolish. This is only from personal experience, as I said, but it's common sense, and it tells me that my experiences that are not atypical. They're not they are typical experiences of what happens in most people's lives. There are going to be trade-offs in lives, and there's consequences. And like I've said in a lot of these videos, time is your biggest asset. You cannot get any of this back. And when you break down the amount of time that you're spending, you've got 8 hours a night for sleeping, 8 hours a day for working, and then divide the other third of your life up into whatever, half for the stuff that you have to do, and you're left with a few hours in the day to do the things that you want to do. Now, there's ways of increasing your quality of time and increasing the amount of time that you've got to do the things that you really want to do in life, but that's a different video. But I'm saying that within that 4 hours, you just cannot afford to spend time with idiots. It's just one of those things in life. I think it's you're either in one state of mind or another. You're tired, or you're not. You're preoccupied, you're worried, or you're happy, you're depressed. So different thoughts are going to give you different outcomes. Different people in life are going to give you different outcomes. If you listen to people in your ear all the time, certain types of people who are going to make you depressed. If you're in a depressed mood, if you're thinking about your future in a certain perspective, you can your future will reflect the mood that you're in at that moment. So if you're depressed, you're going to think depressive thoughts about yourself in the future. If you're happy, you'll think happy thoughts, and that's just the way it is. If you're drugged up, you're going to think along those wavelengths. Alcohol is a depressant. It lowers inhibitions. It lowers mental capacity, mental capability. So you're not only less able to keep things in and bring up thoughts, cogent thoughts, but the thoughts that you're bringing up are less able in themselves, right? You've got alcohol creates a short-term confusion, but eventually it creates a long-term confusion. They talk about Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, where you start losing that short-term memory and the long-term memory, right? It starts affecting your brain on a very basic level. That doesn't just happen. This is a process and a progressive deterioration of the brain. woolly thinking, they used to call it in Ireland, where you're just walking around in a fucking daze all the time. And if you've got companions who are doing the same thing, then they're feeding you that same thing. You know, you when I used to drink, half the time I'd spend at home and half the time I'd spend in pubs. You know, when I say half and half, it wasn't probably half and half. Most of the time I spent at home because I couldn't afford to go to the pubs in Ireland. But when I was in the pubs, you'd hear the same platitudes, the same trivialities, the same old shite. You know, putting the worlds to rights, we used to say, which was basically you're thinking outward thinking. You're focusing your mind on things that are outside of yourself, things that you can do nothing about. They sound really good in the moment when you're drunk, when your brain is depressed, but there's no real basis for deep thinking or positive action or, you know, getting yourself to any place fast, you know. Same old talking points. And the thing about drinkers together is that nobody is going to rock the boat. Everyone is trying to maintain this certain kind of a compliance within the group. You're enabling each other, you're condoning the behaviors, you're giving permission to continue the behaviors that you're doing. Nobody wants to speak out of turn, right? You know, there's a certain balance and equilibrium that you need to maintain. The outside world, outside the pub, might be all fucked up, but in here everything is designed to be undisturbed. And we do this in our homes as well, by the way, for those who drink on their own. You know, you set up your house to be that place of that safe haven. Not a safe haven where you lock the doors and stuff like that, that's a part of it, but a safe haven from the perspective of you're not having to listen to things that you don't want to listen to. And even though alcohol creates a certain amount of volatility, you know, there's always a threat of an upset, a disturbance, and it's there all the time when you're with other drinkers. So everyone's trying to, even subconsciously trying to keep that down. Nobody wants a group of lads to break out into a fight in a pub because, you know, there's going to be consequences to that, and you know that there's going to be consequences to that. So just think about all your rituals that you do either in the bars or at home. You know, think about your personal rituals surrounding alcohol. Think about alcohol as a tool that the tool that will dull the edges around your thinking. You know, follow the logic, and soon, you know, that those edges of what you're thinking about become blurred. So, you know, when I'm talking about the alcohol dulls the brain. You know, people drink because they want to push a certain bit of certain feelings behind them. You know, it inhibits certain things and allows you to be more exuberant or whatever. But it doesn't just inhibit the smart or the things that are annoying you. It inhibits an awful lot more. So, yeah, that's where the term comes from. Like I said, I can't sit there with people who are drinking now because they just bore me to tears, you know. As soon as I hear somebody getting drunk now, I'm out the door. You know, and I'm not saying anything about them. Everyone can do their own thing, you know. It's your body, it's your life. Do what you want with it. But my time is clicking, my time is ticking away, and I have to get on with the things that I'm doing myself. So I do not want to sit there and listen to another bullshit conversation from people that are not on that same wavelength there. So that's all that is coming for. Anyway, I'm going to stop it for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you've listened this far, I suppose we've nearly got to an hour now. We're heading off to Ireland in a few days' time. We'll be away for a few weeks, so we'll probably do the next one of these in November. Take care of yourself. Keep the alcohol out of your mouth. Don't forget, we've got Habits V2. If anyone wants that step-by-step helping, we're there. The platform is there for you. So take care of yourself, and I will speak to you again very soon. All right, onwards and upwards. Bye now.